This is Chennai, a vibrant coastal metropolis defined by its sheer, sprawling scale. But for a city with such outsized global importance, it holds a strange paradox. There are no ancient architectural ruins here. Unlike other major capitals willed into existence by an emperor's decree or a religious mandate, this metropolis began as a corporate asset. It was built for a trading monopoly. The origin point traces back to 1639. Two traders from the East India Company, Francis Day and Andrew Cogan, managed to secure a narrow strip of sand on the Bay of Bengal. They had a single, highly practical goal: to build a protected warehouse for their goods. The mystery lies in how a simple, square trading post organically grew into a self-sufficient administrative stronghold that eventually birthed a city of millions. To understand the DNA of modern Chennai, we have to isolate its nucleus and read the physical blueprint of Fort St. George. When we examine the original 1640 layout, the design is highly practical. At the very center sat the governor's house, a guarded structure known as the castle. This was immediately surrounded by a tight, outer defensive wall. Almost instantly, the economic gravity of the company pulled people in. A labor force of native weavers, painters, and cloth workers gathered just north of the walls, forming a settlement dedicated to the lucrative textile trade. This flourishing native settlement took on the name Chennapatnam. It is the direct linguistic ancestor of the metropolis that stands there today. Inside the fort, the British employees established their own society. This space, St. Mary's Church, was completed in 1680. It stands today as the oldest Anglican church in India, serving as their primary social hub. The parish records trace the lives of the people who ran the settlement. In November 1680, it recorded the marriage of a company clerk named Elihu Yale. The personal fortunes he amassed trading out of this fort would later cross the Atlantic to fund Yale University. At this stage, the East India Company had no grand territorial ambitions in India. They were focused entirely on running a highly profitable, self-contained company town. The purely commercial nature of the settlement was shattered in 1746. Over the next 12 years, French forces repeatedly laid siege to the outpost. The bombardments caused immense destruction, tearing the upper floors off nearly every structure in the settlement. When the smoke cleared, St. Mary's Church was the only building left completely intact. The executives realized their simple warehouse could not survive a modern conflict. To protect their assets, they required a permanent military installation. Watch this map. Diverting the Elenbor River, they expanded outward into a massive pentagon. They carved deep moats and constructed the King's Barracks. At 10,000 square meters, it was built to house a British battalion. By 1772, they added the Grand Arsenal in the southwestern corner. They needed a dedicated facility simply to safely stockpile their new reserves of ammunition. Even the commercial spaces grew. In 1790, they built the Exchange House for private merchants. It was so prominent, its roof served as the foundation for the city's very first lighthouse. Driven by the trauma of those sieges, the East India Company transformed. The vulnerable trading firm had rebuilt itself into a heavily fortified standing army. By the late 19th century, the geography shifted yet again. The construction of a modern harbor caused the sea line to permanently recede away from the eastern wall, leaving a wide stretch of land where the ocean used to be. The fort saw its final defensive modification in 1942. Concerns over a potential Japanese invasion prompted officials to hastily seal the old central sea gates with bricks. Look at this historic photograph. As naval threats faded through the 20th century, the fort ceased to be a purely military installation. The rigid military grid softened, and civilian and commercial life began blending into the space. Today, those historic military spaces have adapted. The old Exchange House operates as a public museum, and the massive King's Barracks now functions as an army canteen. But the most revealing transition is here. This bright white complex occupies the original site of the 17th century trading operation. It now serves as the Legislative Assembly of Tamil Nadu. Inside these thick walls, the streets remain quiet and neatly ordered, a sharp contrast to the sprawling, chaotic megacity operating just outside. Fort St. George remains a functional part of Chennai's daily civic life. By constructing a secure warehouse, the East India Company inadvertently laid the foundations for a metropolis, as their corporate walls evolved into the administrative center of the modern city.